Welcome back to Chapter 4, Classification of Young Children with Exceptionalities. I'm so pumped you're tuning in today. We are talking about how we figure out, understand, and actually support kids who just learn a little differently. It's a huge deal if you're ever going to work with kids, so let's jump right in. Okay, today's topic is basically an alphabet soup of special education acronyms. To make it super easy, we're going to break it all down using a really simple framework. We're going to look at four things. 1, the who. Categories of exceptional children. 2, the how, assessing young children. 3, the what, creating the support plan. And finally, 4, the where, providing and paying for services. So, starting off with part 1. 1, the who, categories of exceptional children. Because, honestly, before we can even begin to support exceptional students, we really need to know who actually qualifies for that help under the law. First up, there's this massive law called IDEA. That stands for the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. Basically, it's a huge rulebook making sure kids with disabilities get a free, proper public education. Now, under Part B of this law, which is for kids from ages 3 all the way up to 21, there are 13 specific categories of disabilities. So to get special services, a student's disability has to fit into one of these 13 buckets. We're talking things like autism, hearing impairments, or specific learning disabilities. But here is the absolute crucial point. Just having the disability isn't enough. It literally has to get in the way of their learning for them to actually qualify. But wait, what about the really little guys, the babies and the toddlers? Well, that is where Part C of IDEA steps in, and that covers kids from birth up to age 3. For these tiny ones, states don't use those 13 strict buckets. Instead, they look at 5 broad areas of development. They're checking to see if a toddler is falling behind in adaptive skills, which are just everyday life skills like feeding or dressing themselves. They also look at physical, cognitive, social, emotional, and communication growth. It basically acts as a really wide safety net to catch any delays as early as possible. Okay, let's totally flip the script for a second. When we call a child exceptional, it doesn't just mean they have a disability. It goes the other way too. It also includes students who are GT, or gifted and talented. In a school setting, GT just means children who demonstrate extraordinary ability compared to other kids their exact same age. They're learning and performing at a level where they actually need extra support that goes way beyond the standard everyday curriculum. And honestly, this brings up a huge misunderstanding. A lot of people think being gifted just means getting perfect scores on your math and reading tests. But no way, it is way more than that. Giftedness totally includes high academic achievement, sure, but it also includes amazing creative ability, really strong leadership skills, and even visual or performing arts. Like a student might be a natural-born leader who just inspires everyone around them, or maybe they're an incredible artist. Those are super valid areas of giftedness that need support too. All right, let's move right into our second section, 2, the how, assessing young children. This is all about how schools actually identify and test these kids. Now, schools generally use 2 main types of tests. On the left here, we have standardized assessments. Think of these as your classic formal paper and pencil tests. They are scored the exact same way for every single kid, and they're super rigid. But on the right, we have authentic assessments. This happens in completely natural settings. So instead of forcing a 4-year-old to sit perfectly still at a desk, a teacher might just assess their fine motor skills by watching them play with beads on the floor. It just makes so much more sense for their age, and it lets the kid react naturally. So with all these testing tools out there, I really want to ask you a critical question. Are tests always accurate? Like, if a kid totally bombs a standardized test, does that automatically mean they have a learning disability? Well, the short answer is no, definitely not. Assessments have some major flaws, especially when we're talking about really young children. For example, a test might accidentally penalize a student just because English isn't their first language. If the test is in English, but the child speaks Spanish at home, a low score might literally just be a language barrier, not a learning delay at all. We also see a lot of cultural mismatches, where a test question assumes a kid has had certain life experiences that they just haven't. This leads to false positives, like saying a kid has a disability when they totally don't, or false negatives, where we miss a kid who really needs help. The harsh reality is, our education system is still really struggling with a lack of truly bias-free testing. Which brings us to section 3. 3. The what? Creating the support plan. Let's look at the actual legal game plans for these students. Get ready for 2 massive acronyms that you are going to hear constantly, the IEP and the IFSP. Let's break them down. On the left, IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. This one is for kids ages 3 to 21. It's heavily focused on the school environment, and it maps out really specific educational goals. On the right, the IFSP stands for Individualized Family Service Plan. This is for the babies and toddlers, from birth to age 3. And the absolutely crucial difference here is the word family. An IFSP doesn't just look at the baby, it looks at how to support the entire family in their natural setting. Usually that happens right inside their own living room, because let's face it, parents are a baby's very first and most important teachers. All right, moving into our final piece, Section 4, the where, providing and paying for services. How does this all actually work in the real world? When it comes to figuring out where a child should learn, the absolute gold standard goal is inclusion. We want exceptional kids learning right alongside kids without disabilities in standard, everyday classrooms whenever we possibly can. Now, sometimes they might need center-based programs. Those are specialized facilities that have special equipment. You're also going to see the term BOCES, which stands for Board of Cooperative Education Services. This is basically when a bunch of school districts team up to share the costs of really expensive special education services that they just couldn't afford on their own. Which totally brings up an incredibly important logistical question. It's the engine that literally keeps special education running. Who actually pays for all of this? I mean, specialists, custom equipment, tailored lesson plans, none of this is cheap. Basically, the bill gets split up. The federal government chips in funds through IDEA, state disability agencies throw in some money, and local public school districts cover a huge chunk of it. But there's a really major catch when it comes to private schools. If a parent chooses to put their kid in a private school, those private schools generally cannot receive direct IDEA funds from the government. The local public school district still has to identify those kids and offer some basic, fair support, but the heavy lifting of paying for special education, that is mostly reserved for the public school system. So there you have it. We've covered the who, the how, the what, and the where. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a provocative thought. You know the law now. You know the flaws with testing, and you know the plans we use to help these amazing kids. So, how can you ensure your future classrooms and communities are truly inclusive for all types of exceptionalities? Keep these concepts in your back pocket. Think about them, and use them to champion every single child's right to learn. Thanks so much for joining me today.